Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news, stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific North. Fresh, from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
The getting sweeter Mariners, baby.
Sometimes things get sweet and sometimes things get sour. And welcome to cut day in the NFL. Seahawks initial 53-man roster was released today. We're going to talk a little bit about that and also talk about a season win-loss projection going game by game, seeing how we feel about that so you can write it in Sharpie.
Yep.
Lock it in. Lock it in.
Lock it in.
Lock it in. But before we do that, why don't I tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy that is going to pull some things out of thin air like a magician throughout this episode, because I already did it at the very beginning when we were doing a little pre-show prep. If you're looking for a guy like that, you're looking for a guy like me, your boy, Coach Red. You can find me on X at the Real Coach Red, on Instagram at the Real _ Coach Red, TikTok at the Real Coach Red. Also find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or two. And if you're looking for a guy that is like a lot of these younger Seahawks players, he's happy that he didn't get cut today. He's excited to be on the roster of Kicking It with Coach Red. He's really become an emerging talent, and we're really excited to see what he does this year. And hopefully, he doesn't pull a throat string or a hamstring, because both will take him out of the running to make the postseason roster. But if you're looking for a guy like that, you're looking for a guy like Cain.
I guess who else you got in that regards? I'm just here to stay.
Got
But
the
yeah,
thought, baby.
that's true. We need to
For the
get him back.
Seahawks, he wants to come back.
Um, I'm Kane. You can find me over on Twitter at K2406, TikTok, Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
When we want to talk about the roster crunch that happened today, there wasn't a ton of cuts that really caught me super off guard. There were a few guys that made it that were a little bit surprising, but a lot of this team, you knew who the players were going to be. There were a couple of guys that are going to start the season on the pup with the new rules this year. It's not out for 6 weeks, it's only out for 4. And those guys are Cameron Young, nose tackle that was drafted last year. You've got Jarek Reed, the second safety, special team stud, tore all sorts of stuff in his knee towards the tail end of last year. And the other one that you were hoping was going to be back is starting right tackle Abe Lucas. That one out of the group is the one that hurts the most, but the one shining spot there with the MCL strain for Chinny Nwosu, he's not going on AR on pup. I expect him to go on the short term IR, so that way if he's not going to be ready for week 1, they're going to be able to get a little bit more reinforcements in there. But Kane, because we always turn to you, who is a surprise cut that you had for today?
A surprise cut for me would be Dwayne Eskridge, right? Because we drafted him high, and you
It
had
was also, let's caveat that was also the draft that was coming right after COVID, where the Seahawks came in with 3 draft selections and they left with 3 draft selections. That was the one year that Pete and John did not go balls deep in getting more picks, right? This was one
right.
where you thought they would and they didn't because of that
Mhm.
COVID shortened year. And the only guy left on the roster right now that was part of that draft is Stone Forsyth.
Right. And so, you had high expectations from him, injured most of
Lied.
the
There's also
time.
Trey Brown. Trey Brown's still here.
Trey
Trey Brown
Brown's
was in that draft.
pretty good, not gonna lie. But you kind of had high expectations of him, and it's just been an injury plagued, and DJ Dallas has been the return guy, right? Until he has it.
Well, he did run a punt back over the weekend, and you
He
thought that
did.
really was going to put him in a spot. But when you look at some of the guys that made this team, specifically Laviska Shenault, who is a do-all
Yeah.
gadgety type player on offense, and then also does give you a lot in the return game. Availability has been the toughest thing for Eskridge his whole career. He's
Yes.
never had a full season healthy. When he starts to get some momentum, gets derailed by injury again and again. I hope that he finds a good spot and he can stay healthy. It's one of those guys, like
You root
CJ
for.
Procise that could just never stay healthy, and it's not his fault, but he's a slight guy and he was running across middle and it didn't always work out for him. And he had a lot of soft tissue injuries as well. So I wish him the best. For me, I wasn't super duper shocked by that, but
I mean, I wasn't either, but it just you wanted him to do well, and especially the return. The return was awesome,
yeah, it was.
super awesome. But as you said, availability, right? And I just think there's a big plus side with Laviska Shenault.
Well, and when you look at another guy that was going to be fighting potentially for a return, but can give you more in the special teams game and give you just as much as more in the wide receiver game, because Eskridge was buried on the depth chart, is Derek Young.
Yeah,
Derek Young's a bigger guy, has more versatility, can be used more than just a returner
and
in special teams.
you have talked pretty highly about Tariq Young the
I
last couple
love
of
Derek
years.
Young.
You do.
He's a phenomenal blocker on the edge too. Him and Bobo, and even JSN was getting in some pretty filthy blocks as well so far during the one preseason
Yeah,
block I saw him make.
yeah. Who was your surprise?
My surprise cut, and I think that it might lend itself to some better news that Jerome Baker might be ready to start the year, was the kid Barrett that we just traded for.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I
you
just figured like he would be on the roster because you traded for him, right?
and you gave up Mike Jackson for him. And this is a guy, which the
Yeah.
reason I'm not completely shocked, this guy was a 7th round draft pick this year. Yes, he was a captain at Michigan last year. This is a guy that I guess was sought after. The Seahawks had a lot of late round picks. They could have pulled the trigger and had him in camp longer if they so chose. But I do think this is a guy, especially that was a late round pick, if they did like him that much, either trying to slide him on the practice squad, or if you do have some guys that you're going to have to put on the IR, like Chinny Nwosu, that could be that short term 2 weeker. This is a guy that can come in and take that roster spot or be a practice squad elevation early in the year if he's on the practice squad.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a head scratcher type of deal, right? Because we all like Mike Jackson, but again, he got kind of buried on the depth chart with the emergence of Trey Brown, right? So there's really not a spot for it.
Yeah. Anyone else was kind of a surprise cut for you?
I mean, not really. I feel like Artie Burns can come back at some point.
Yeah. He's
It's
been
happened
solid, but I
before,
think you've got younger upside with Kobe Bryant.
right? And hey, man, big shouts to Pritchett making the 53 man. That's really cool.
Yeah. I think that I saw that one coming as soon as Mike Jackson was on this team, because Mike Jackson has been a solid player for this team. The one
Mhm.
guy that makes sense but also hurts is George Lonnie. And
Yes.
I think that what's the Seahawks third string running back real quick? I just want the listeners to see if we know.
Macintosh.
What were you saying earlier?
Don't worry about it.
No, I want to know. I can't recall.
I can't either.
McTonish.
All right, let's
Yeah.
just move on.
So with Kenny McIntosh decided that he wanted to put a stamp. He had one touch in the run game and absolutely went to the house. And this is what he was billed at coming into last year, but
Just
injuries
couldn't,
plagued him. And
yeah, couldn't
he's
see the
looked
field.
extremely good in the preseason. But Halani was another guy that toted the rock well in the preseason. And that's the tough thing with running backs is running backs, you're not going to have your studs out there. K9 I mean, really wasn't on the field at all during the preseason. So he got a lot. Helani got a lot of run, and
Hmm.
with his pedigree that he brings from Boise State, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got a good frame, seemed to have good contact balance. I think this is a perfect practice squad guy.
Yeah.
You can never have too. It's like a fantasy football team. You can never have too many running backs. I love guys that have laying in wait because you never know when that little nagging injury pops up and you need to bring that guy up for a week or two, or if something goes
Hey,
down. You want a guy that's been in your system because just like fantasy football, it's tough to find a quality running back once you get into the middle of the season.
that's why I went heavy on him this year.
Big ups. All right. The other guy that I'll just briefly touch on, it's a guy that could never get healthy during training camp, and that is our boy Westy, the vacuum, Jack Westover.
I think
I,
he'll be back.
if he can get healthy, I think that this guy's a in-season practice squad candidate for sure. But I'm not as sure anymore because if you want to look at some surprises that actually made the squad, the first one for me is going to be Brady Russell. And he looked extremely good during the preseason. Soft hands, physical blockers. I think he had one drop, but he came back and then made an immaculate catch later in that drive. And this is a guy that got some good run because Farrell Brown was banged up during parts of camp. He's a guy that looked a little bit more polished than AJ Barner at times, which you weren't gonna, you know what you have in the upside of Barner. So he was obviously gonna make this team. And if Westover's available for camp, you don't know if this changes, but it kind of makes it tougher to get in and break that room when you're rolling four deep.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I'm very upset. I love Jack Westover, and I just want him to stay in Seattle. It'll just be perfect, right?
Yeah. Another little bit of a shocker that is a bigger head scratcher. A guy that made the team, undrafted free agent, offensive lineman. I believe he's a center. Is Jalen Sundell. So you're sitting there. Does that bode that maybe Connor Williams isn't going to be ready for the start of the year and you wanted to have a lock? Maybe he's going to be that short term IR. Or what's that say about Olawatimi? Because I think Olawatimi, we were pretty high coming into the season. Obviously, Connor Williams is going to get that start at center when he's available. But I think this could be an omen that you might not see Connor Williams in that first game of the season because it's hard to leave some of the other guys off that we talked about and
Hmm.
have this guy on the team.
Right, right. A little bit of a head scratcher.
All right. Give me a guy that you are just really excited that they made the squad, the original 53 man roster.
It is Laviska Shenault, dude. I mean, with Carolina, they had high hopes for him, right? He was taken pretty high.
Second
And
rounder.
yeah, and the fact that, it just kind of fell apart, changes scenery, right? He actually, like him and Bobo are gonna get receptions this year. Most likely they will. Ryan Grubb is gonna get them the ball, right? See what
Well,
they
I,
can
I I
do.
would hope that he's going to get the ball more to the likes of Tyler Lockett and DK
Well,
Metcalf and
yeah.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
I
That's
mean,
my hope.
of course, right? But you're gonna see them and they're gonna probably have routes, and they're probably gonna get the ball, right? And I just think that he's such a toolsy player, right? You can use him in so many different ways. He can play the slot pretty well, so that's a plus for him. And I just really, really am glad that he made the team, dude. It was a kind of a battle between him and Eskridge.
Yeah.
So, who's yours?
I've got two. The first guy I'm going to go with is D. Williams. And this guy that came into camp, super toolsy, athletic type guy. And I think this is another reason why D. Eskridge is probably not on this team. He came in as a wide receiver and during camp switched to corner and beat out DJ James, who was drafted in the 6th round.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
yes,
That's
yes, it
impressive.
is. And that is kind of nuts if you ask me.
That's like the stories that you look at. That's like the Bobo story. That's like the Derek Young, who I have an affinity for, that was a seventh rounder out of Lenore Rhyme, right? You know,
Yeah.
these are good stories. And the last good story is Mike Gerald, late round pick out of Finlay, you know, D3 school,
Mhm.
making this team. He's got the physical tools, and he looked pretty good during the preseason against like competition. You're hoping that a little bit more time. This is a guy that you probably could have got on the practice squad, but I'm stoked as all get out for him to make that initial 53 man.
And you know, another one was Pritchett, dude. Super cool that he made this. I was hoping that both would, and you can convert one of them to a safety role and kind of run that tandem. But super proud of him for, you know, beating Artie Burns out, probably.
Yeah,
Or Mike Jackson, right? Like,
they made him, you know, expendable at this point in the process.
yeah. So super happy for Pritchett.
Well, that's a little bit of breakdown. No shockers at the top. Geno Smith and Sam Howell make the team. Um,
Yeah,
K9, Sharbs, and McTonish
sure,
ended
dude.
up scraping by. I was surprised that the big mountain out of Utah, Samoe Ukulani, I don't remember his name. I just shut down my phone and moved it to the side because we're about to move. A little surprised he made it because I didn't hear a lot of buzz on him from camp, but the defense was almost chalk on what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really exciting to see what the Seahawks do with new coordinators on both sides of the ball, new head coach, new scheme, all the way around. And you've heard good things, and that's what you hope to hear.
It,
But you know what you need to do? Go win ball games, or you might
mm,
lose those ball
well,
games.
the
So we
one
need to
thing
break it down on what we think is going to happen.
the one thing I do want to say is the first drive from Saturday's game was just beautiful, right?
Crispy. Gino looking
Six
dialed.
six plays, all passing yards. JSN makes it another insane catch, and then DK absolutely just demolishes defender, dude. Oh, it was just the cherry on top,
You
and it
love to
gives
see
you
it.
it's a good glimpse of what Ryan Grubb has for this offense.
Yeah. All right, let's go in to week one. Week one, Broncos are coming into
Broncos.
Lumen Field in Seattle. Kane, is this a win or a loss for you?
I think this is a win because you have Bo Nix being their starting quarterback, right? First game, the jitters, whatnot. I think this defense is going to be locked in on them. And, you know, they got rid of Jerry Judy. They basically just have Cortland Sutton.
And Greg Dulcich,
Sure, sure, dude. Whatever
Javante
you say.
Williams. I think that this is going to be tough for any rookie quarterback, especially game one, coming into an
Yep.
area that know that's going to be rocking. The fans are going to be extremely loud looking at this new regime.
Yeah.
You've got a difficult defense to game plan for, and you've got a rookie quarterback who I think deserved to be drafted in the first round. But the arm talent, I don't know if it's there at the NFL level. And to go in a very hostile environment, especially for Bo Nix, because I'll tell you one thing, and I'll tell you one thing that I know for a fact. If you're from the state of Washington and you root for WSU or you root for UW, there's one thing we can all agree on, that we hate Oregon. So Bo Nix, they're going to be loud, buddy, and it's going to be a long day for the Broncos. I got it as a win as well. If we disagree, we're going to see who can do it and to get our final rankings for the year.
Yeah, and I just think that this offense is going to explode week one. They're going to make a statement.
All right. Week two, going across country to New England to take on Gerard Mayo's Patriots. Kane, what are you feeling in this game?
I'm also feeling a win. The Patriots still aren't very good.
No.
They still aren't very good. Their defense is kind of their only redeemable thing. Christian
Mediocre.
Gonzalez is there, and he's a stud. Um, but
It'll be interesting to see the dynamic. because you've
And
got
who's their quarterback that week? That's the big question.
it's probably gonna be Drake May, could be Jacoby Brissett. You've also got to look at our boy that got brought in the second round to kind of head this wide receiver room and Jalen Polk. But
Yep.
Jalen Polk at times shrunk in the moment. There was a couple of weeks where he didn't have catches when you had Jalen McMillan out. So you got to be able to take care of business. This is another one where I don't know if the offense can hang with the defense. I think that Mike McDonald defense and Arden Durde are gonna keep this thing
Nice
locked
and tight.
down. And
Yep.
then when you look at the offensive side, I trust Gino, K9, and the whole wide receiving core a lot more than I do those compare. I think Gino's got the edge. I think K9's got the edge over Ramondre. When you throw in Sharps, I would say him and Antonio Gibson are close. But when you look at that wide receiver room, that's where the difference is made in the tight end room as well.
Yep. I
So,
agree.
all right, we got 2 dubs. All right, coming back home, taking on the Miami Dolphins and all that speed.
Yeah, this one I Reek is fast. He's gonna be on the hill all game.
Waddle's also fast.
I understand that. I think Spoon can cover it. This is gonna be tough though, right? This is really a tough matchup because you have HN and you have Mostert. They both are very talented.
Lightning in a bottle.
Tua, fantastic arm talent. I mean, he's gotten better over the years.
I
He's
would
gotten
say
better.
I would say he's an above average game manager.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, you also have basically track stars as their wide receivers. It's going to be tough. It really is. I still think Seahawks rock it and they're going to win. What is it? Late September?
Yeah.
Late September, getting a little bit chilly up there.
It's not gonna be that chilly. I I got this one as a Dolphins win. And the reason I say that is because I think defensively they've had the same coordinators in place under Mike McDaniel. And I think that this is going to be the real first test because I like a lot of things McDaniel does. I
I do
do
too.
know that there has been some nice battles between the Ravens and the Dolphins under these two regimes. So it's not like McDonald is this will be the first time that they're seeing his style of defense. I think that it's going to be interesting to see where they're at health wise on defense. I think that if the Echeniosu's back, I think that could do some tilting in one side or the other. I think this Jerome Baker's gonna want to go make a statement, but I do think that how they came out of last year, the continuity that you have with the Dolphins, I do think that this could be a game that the Seahawks do drop at home because they've all been in the system a little bit longer. I think that's where I
Yeah,
give
and
the
that's fair. That's fair. I think it really just is a flip of a coin game. It really is.
yeah. I'm gonna mark it down as a loss. All right.
Fair.
Week 4, Monday night football at the Lions. Dan Campbell's,
Oh,
the Detroit
God.
Dannies.
I also love this Lions offense, dude. This Lions offense is electric. But as years passed, right, it's gonna be a shootout. It's destined to be a shootout, right? I think they lose this game. I really do.
See, I think they win this game because if you look at the recent history, even when the Lions have been good, even last year, Seahawks beat the Lions.
Should been a
That's what the
shootout every
Seahawks
year,
do.
bro.
They beat the Lions. And what you really look at is you could say that in some form or fashion that you've had the influences of the Sean Payton, but I think there's a little Shanahan in that Ben Johnson tree.
Mm-hmm.
Shanahan offenses have not always done super well against a Mike McDonald defense. I think that you look at this is a huge game. It's It's going to be interesting because it's going to be the first primetime game of McDonald's career. But I do know who does show out in Monday Night Primetime, and that is DK Metcalf. I am thinking Metcalf is
It's
going to
fair.
pop for about 200 in this game, 200 yards.
Hey, it's on record.
I'm giving them a win. Sorry, Kane.
Fair enough.
We're still at the same record that both of us would have thought through four at 3-1. Come back home facing the you go from the Detroit Dannies to the Danny Nichols of New York, the New York Giants, and Danny Dimes coming into town.
That's a win. That's a win, hands down. They let Saquon walk. I mean, they have Malik Neighbors. That's just about it. But
Daniel
Darren Waller,
Bellinger,
sure, sure. It's
Devin
his time to
Singletary.
their times to shine, I guess.
I think that
Devin
defense still
Singletary
needs a little bit more.
has
You
been
got
very
Thibodeau
mid.
defensively that can wreak some havoc, but I
That's
think
about
that
it.
they've had, especially at that Monday night game where they knocked Daniel Jones out and just had their way with them. I think this is a win as well. All
Yeah.
right, we go to our next primetime game, Thursday night football versus division rivals, San Francisco 49ers.
I this one's tough, right? The track record has not been great. We've gotten swept by them the last couple of years, and I still don't know if year one Mike Donald can get the first win out of the way. I think this is a loss.
I agree with this. There's going to be a lot of factors. Is Brandon Ayuk still on this team? Is Debo healthy? Is Purdy healthy? Is Williams healthy?
Kittle
They're
healthy.
Yeah, CMC, is he in that lineup? Um 49ers have taken care of business, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And you're coming into a short week. This is the first short week of McDonald's head coaching career. It is at home, which you like, but what I don't like is just that short week, less preparation time, because you've got first year head coach, first year coordinators. You do have Leslie Frazier as the elder statesman in the room, right? Helping out this whole staff as one of their assistants. But
Mhm.
I think that one's going to be a tough one.
I do. I do too.
All right. The next game we have is going on the road, get a little bit longer of prep time to go take on Kirk Cousins, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and the whole farm down there in hot Atlanta.
I also think this one is gonna be tough because right now you also have to think how is Kirk's health, right, on the year. Um he is coming off a ruptured Achilles, so you might have him or Penix. Um or maybe even Heineke. Uh the offense has so many weapons, and the defense is pretty stout as well. We're gonna be down in Atlanta. I think they have a chance to lose this game.
Yeah, they haven't played very well against Atlanta in the last couple of years either. And it's not like their offense led by Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ritter and Marcus Mariota have been anything that inspired fear. And that's why Arthur Smith's no longer there. So I think I think this could be a little bit of a loss town for him.
Yeah.
All right.
And who knows? They could come out and shock us all and just win all the ones we say they lose.
I hope not. All right. Next game we got is the Buffalo Bills coming into town.
It's also going to be a tough game.
That's what happens. And you look at the NFC East, and they're a little bit tougher on paper than they've been in years past, especially with the Jets making their improvements. But the Bills have been a playoff staple. What do you
Right.
think?
I could see them coming out with a win on this one. The one thing that the Bills did lose, right? They lost a safety, they lost a corner, they lost Stephon Diggs, right? They have Dalton Kincaid. We all really like him.
Dawson Knox.
Dawson Knox, I believe, is injured, but
He'll
outside,
probably be back by this point in the season.
uh, their like little utility guy that popped off last year.
Isaiah
Sure.
McKenzie.
Yeah, like I'm not too worried. They have James Cook. Josh Allen's really good, but he throws a high interception rate too. So I could see them coming away. They're at home. They're gonna win this game.
I'll agree with you on this one, especially because in that wide receiver room last year, you had Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and you had Khalil Shakur, who I think is who's gonna advance this year. But Keon Coleman was very boomer bust during his time at Florida State. You saw that especially when their quarterback went down. But I do think that their defense was always getting a little bit older and a little bit older. This could be a big wake up season for the Bills, especially if their offense can't pace like they've been able to. And I think that this is a game where you could see a few turnovers coming from Josh Allen. So we'll see what happens. But we'll
Yeah.
mark this one as a dub. All right. Next week we've got at home versus the Rams.
I think this is also a win. Um, I get McVay is this just offensive genius, right? And all that. But I think that they can clamp down Cup and Puka. So I'm going to knock this up to a win. They got a young secondary. They've got a young D line. I just think that the offense is just going to click and they're going to pop off. So,
See, I think that this could be a game where you could just see that offense click for the Rams. And it pains me to say, but
and it
if you're
just
looking for
all
a
the
game
time.
where if you've got Matt Stafford back there and a healthy Cooper Cup and Puka Nakua and Kyron Williams, who was a maven at the end of the year, I think that this could be that game where you just look and
I mean, I
go,
hope not.
what the hell happened?
Right. I hope not. But I just think that it's going to come down to a split with the Rams on the year. I really do. They're going to win and they're going to win one, they're going to lose one. And that's
I
where
can get
it's
behind that.
I just think that they get the win out of the way early and stay ahead of them in the playoff race.
All right. Following week after this, you got the bye week, week 10. I think it's a great time for the bye
Of
for any
course.
team. I kind of like the middle of the year or even a little bit later. Those early buys are just
Brutal.
sometimes too tough, right? Um, After that, we've got with a little extra rest game at the 49ers.
I think this is the one that we win.
See, I put the Rams down as a loss for that last one because I wanted to hammer a win here. A little extra time. The 49ers, yes, they do have some good young pieces, but they do have a lot of older pieces too. And this is where you're starting to see the wear and tear. How is Trent Williams going to hold up? The guy's like 44 years old now. I feel like he's Dwayne Brown out there. And, you know, with Christian McCaffrey, there's news today that Elijah Mitchell's on season-ending IR. So the depth behind CMC is not as good as it has been in years past. So I think this could be that game where you go down into San Francisco and you just steal a little bit of souls.
I think so. I think I think they also split the year with them, and I'm gonna take the season as is right there as a win, right? Because if you split with the
I'm not. I would like
I
them to make the playoffs. I'm
of
not going to say if
course
they split with the 49ers that I feel good
that's a
about the
step, but
season.
right, but it's a step in the right direction, right?
Yes.
That's where I'm
Yes.
getting. That
Okay.
I will be elated if that happens.
All right. Next game at home versus the Cardinals.
Easy win. Hammer home the win. The Cardinals stink still. They're really bad.
They're kind of up and coming, dude. They really
I
are.
know that. I
They
know
played
that.
tough. They played tough ball last year. It's really going to be interesting to see now that they have a true playmaker, you know, in Marvin Harrison. I do think this is a win right here. Usually, when the Seahawks do get a win versus them, it's earlier in the season. And if they weasel one out, it's usually in big time contention moments down the stretch. I'll give them
Yeah.
the win here, especially riding high off that 49ers win.
Yeah. I just hammer home. I think the Cardinals are still maybe 2 years out, but I get that they're an up and coming team. Just in division, they're not a very good team.
I can get that.
When
All right, next
yeah.
game. Going cross country, flying in a plane to go see the Jets.
A little tough. A little tough. Because Garrett Wilson's very, very good. And the guy who stole defensive rookie of the year away from Tariq Woolen is there too. So it's tough, but there's also a lot of things to look at in this too, right? Aaron Rodgers still hasn't really played snap, right? Since going down last year. And you're hoping that history doesn't repeat itself. It's all a bunch of factors. They could lose this game. The Jets are good. Like they have a good roster.
I think that they lose this, especially coming off of two high end division wins going across the country.
Yeah.
And I think this could be one of the biggest low key defensive just stalemates of the year when it comes to the games that we've seen so far that we've touched on. I think this has the biggest potential to just be a knock 'em out, drag 'em out game, like we used to see with the Cardinals. You know, that double OT tie that we or the OT tie that we had, where I think 12 total points were scored. I think
Mhm.
that you could see a game similar to that in this Jets game, especially you're getting later in the season. You're at minimum into November, possibly December. I did not put the dates to these games. I just put where they were at and maybe give you if it's a primetime game or not. But I do think that Jets one is going to be a tough one in New York
Yes.
that
Yes, I
time of year.
agree. I agree.
All right, next game we got is at the Cardinals, facing the Cardinals 2 times in 3 weeks. And it's the place where the I I'm going to jinx it by saying that there's been a lot of Seahawks that have gotten hurt there. And I'm hoping in saying that it reverse jinxes, but maybe since I said it's a reverse jinx, I just re jinxed it again.
You just need to knock on some wood. How about that? But hammer home the win again. I
I'll
think
take it.
they sweep the Cardinals. There's not a reason that they should lose to the Cardinals.
I can get that. I can get behind that. Coming back home the following week, Sunday night football. Obviously, this late in the season, it could get flexed depending on different matchups and what they want to do and the success of both these teams. But you're taking on Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers.
That one's also tough. Oh, that one's tough because the Packers are a good team. I mean, Jordan Love shocked everybody last year. Uh, I just see a world where this Green Bay team wins.
Yeah, I can get behind that as well too because their defense uh played very well in the playoffs. You know, their offense is emerging.
Stifled Dallas.
You've got
Stifled them.
Christian Watson, who if he could stay on the field a little bit more, young emerging talent. You've got
Jaden
Romeo
Reed.
Dubs. So you've got these players that aren't household names, but I think the big difference this year is Josh Jacobs. You know, at this point, you're gonna have AJ Dillon back most likely as well. Having that two-headed monster, I think could be tough sledding, and that kind of puts us sitting at by our record right now, 1-2 record. But luckily, there's one more primetime game to go, so we can get to that when we get to it. All right. Next game, staying at home, and you are facing the Minnesota Vikings, which could be led by Sam
Let's
Darnold or someone else.
I think this is a win. I understand that they've got Justin Jefferson. I understand that. And TJ Hawkinson most likely back at that point. But no competent quarterback, in my opinion. Yes, JJ McCarthy's down. That's unfortunate. And again, I still don't think that he would be a competent quarterback, but it's also late in the season, right? He's now more established. If that were the case, I just don't see a world where the Vikings win. They still are not very good.
I'll come to Club Dub with you. I think it's a pretty fair assessment.
They're just not very good. Their defense is not very good outside of Justin Jefferson. I mean, they got Aaron Jones, but I don't think anybody, I don't know if anybody took him in the league, or if it was late.
Yeah. Um, let's go to the last primetime game, and it's a Thursday nighter against the Bears.
It's the Bears. That offense is kind of scary on paper, right?
It's
But I
very
think,
scary on paper.
yeah, I just clubbed up for me. You got to keep winning at this point, right? Still Caleb Williams rookie season. Um, I think this is a kind of must win game. Stay in that playoff on it.
I think that this is going to be a battle of two teams that are potentially fighting for a playoff spot. And what the Bears did down the stretch last year, especially defensively, and what they were able to do with Justin Fields. The one thing that Justin Fields was not doing down the stretch was turning the ball over. And that's been something that's plagued Caleb Williams a little bit, especially last year in college, playing a little bit too much hero ball, but the talent is definitely there. This is going to be a tough matchup. It's going to be another Thursday nighter, but go ahead and give me uh, a nice win there to even out the primetime debut of Mike McDonald at 2-2. And then you finish the season on the road against the Rams.
And again, this comes down to a split on the year. I think they either win this game or they lose this game.
We called it a loss on the last one. I'll actually give them a dub in this one because I think that you could see this Ram team that overperformed last year hit a little bit of regression at towards the end of the year. I also think that the Seahawks are going to be primed to be in a good spot to be playing for playoff positioning. The Rams very well could be fighting for a spot as well, but per our logic where we said we were going to win one, lose one, you could flip these two, and I'd probably feel fine about that. So that puts us down at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 losses. It's an 11-6 season.
That's exactly what I said they would go today at work.
I could very much see them at 10-7, but for me right now, I think that's the floor unless they really get bit by injuries. Because when you look at prominent positions, quarterback's one of them. You like what you have out of Geno Smith. You know that at least with what's been reported that he's been well ahead of Sam Howell and that Sam Howell's been a little bit erratic in practices, but he's looked good in the preseason and in not turning the ball over, right? I like that. I like what they have in the running back room. There's good depth at wide receiver. There's different guys that you have that can do different things in the wide receiver room. I think the Seahawks offensive line is going to take a step forward because you've got better veterans in this. You're not relying on youth as much as you have been in years past. The tight end room is a little bit of a step back for me this year, but has the potential to take a step forward. You don't know what you have in AJ Barner. You don't know what you have in Brady Russell, and you don't know what you can do when you actually Ryan Grubb knows how to get the tight ends involved, and it'll be really interesting to see if they're able to utilize the talent that oozes out of Noah Fant's body a little bit better. I
Yeah,
would say
I would hope he does well. I like him.
I would
I
say
like all the
defensive line,
tools.
you're looking at this team. I feel a lot better than I did going into last year. I think Draymond Jones making that position change helps out, even though we were high on him. But Boye Mafe, you saw what he did last year. I saw what Derek Hall did in the preseason. Jaron Reed taking less snaps, I think, is going to be big for his pass rush upside. Jonathan Hankins is a stalwart in the middle. I think when you look at this team, really the position that looks at the beginning of the year, you could probably say safeties going into last year when you had Quandre and when you had Jamal Adams penciled in there and uh, Julian Love. I would say going into last year, the safety room was better. And I would say the linebacker room is better, especially when you've got first ballot Hall of Famer on the team and still tackled at a very high level. There's some more question marks in those two spots, but
especially
I do
with
think
Terrell Dotson and Jerome Baker, because the help, right?
I think
That's all we
Tyrese
have.
Knight's going to get some early play too because you're not
Um,
gonna wear Baker out coming off of injury.
I
So
I really like I really like Tyrese Knight.
and I do love this. I like the safety room, I think, more than I thought I would because Kayvon Wallace is your third safety in this room, and the dude was laying hat. You know that Kobe Kobe's a menace.
Yeah, he is. And then Julian Love is just a freak,
And
dude.
then the other one's Rayshawn Jenkins, who's been a guy that's been sneaky good for the Jaguars. I think.
Right.
And then when you look at year two of Spoon and being able to use him in multiple ways, I think you're going to see him more on the outside. But with what you have in Trey Barron, what you have with Reek, I think there is that upside to make that next step, be firmly as the number two team in your division, and possibly, if things go right, make a play on the Niners and, you know, be right in the thick of this thing until we're done. And I think that when you look at the teams that have a new head coach this year, I would point to the Seahawks as having that this is not just homerness. I would say that between the Seahawks and the Falcons, those are your probably two spots that you could see a team go to the playoffs with a first year head coach.
Yeah, I agree.
And I agree with you that people should start following us more on social media. You can find me, your boy, Coach Red, over on X at the Real Coach Red, on Instagram at the Real _ Coach Red, TikTok at the Real Coach Red. Also, find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or two. Kane, where you at?
Find me over on Twitter, Kane2406, TikTok, Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Falls. Do it. Freaking do it.
And as always, stay fresh.
Stay fresh, peeps.
Peace.